Holy abysmal dog shit, Batman! Welcome to Beer Thunder, the channel where we suffer, and the more we suffer, the more you tune into it, and the more you like and subscribe and share and all that good shit, because we have a new patch. American mains were suffering. Their win rates must have dipped to like 90%, because Gaijin rushed in some special reinforcements in the form of the F-15E, and we have some opinions about that, and we also have the matchup video, because we're going to do a 2-for-1 special, save some time here, because the matchup, it takes probably about 20 to 30 minutes, and I don't have 20 to 30 minutes of commentary to tell you exactly what the F-15E does compared to the other planes of the game. Basically, if you want to save your whole entire time, just think of the 15E as being a very heavy F-15C with a lot of engine power, a lot of low-end thrust, where the thrust kind of makes up for the fact that it's heavy, and it does not like pulling AOA. It will shed its speed faster, but it will also regain it quicker. And the way that this works out in Sim is you have a flight model that is technically better than the F-15C in a 1 versus 1, but the way that it wins is really boring and tedious by flying these gigantic loops around everything else and out-energing it. And it's going to work perfectly fine, because I got Butters on the other side, and I use Butters as kind of like the benchmark for F-15E gamers, because I've already like taken him, and he's basically fought the whole entire spectrum of like sim players, and he'll 1 versus 1 anyone. So if everyone's like, oh no, I would do better than the SU-27, like just fucking show up to the server and like offer to fight him, and he'll fight you. So we can like, I can use him as a benchmark. I also understand like how good he is at the F-15, and he's probably one of the better F-15 players. Like, I haven't seen anyone really consistently beat him F-15 versus F-15 duels for quite a while. Is it possible? Yeah, sure. Would it take effort? Yes. There's a couple of people that in the dueling iceberg, I think, have like a pretty good chance. But if you're not like, if you're not Sung-ho, ace guy, the one that's winning all the DCS tournaments, or you're not like some Korean who like actually like kind of min-maxes duels, your average SP player doesn't have a chance. Like Lance Lynx did duels against Butters, didn't have a chance. I've seen other people do duels against Butters, didn't have a chance. It is what it is. Like I trained the boy well, or something like that. Like I didn't actually train him. I just kind of like brutalized him into like getting good. And he's kind of one of these guys that, if you win against him, he's going to go beat his head against a wall and, like, learn to get good again until he wins. Like, he will double down and triple down, and that's kind of the attitude that you need. And because of this, we have rehearsed the F-15 versus SU-27 matchup so many fucking times at this point. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm, like, literally, I'm the best SU-27 player in the game, but I'm kind of in the same boat of, like, I'm pretty competitive as far as it comes to knowing how to like use the SU-27 in Sim. Now, there are some disclaimers here for the 1 versus 1 matchup thing. Don't use Sim to quantify RB matchups, and don't use RB matchups to quantify Sim matchups, because they're different game modes, and there are things that you can do in Sim that don't get punished as harshly as they do in SB. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are 3 different like limitations within the game as far as like what you're allowed to do. You have the manual control limit, which is like the thing that you can use to do like 90-degree AOA, do funny stall things in the flanker. And then you have the damping limit, which is the kind of the fly-by-wire limit, and this is something that all planes in SB have, or if you fly in SAS damping. And then you also have, on top of that, you have instructor limitations, which is the thing that RB players have to deal with. So sometimes you end up with people that say that like a certain flight model, like, oh my god, it's better in SB, and the flight model is held back by like the instructor. Like people say that about the MiG-29, the SU-27 all the time. There is about 50% truth to that, but the other 50% is like in SB, people are just worse. People in SB make more mistakes. It's easier to punish people. It's easier to like get position behind a guy and just sit behind him and win that way. It means that planes like the SU-27 end up feeling a little bit more competitive, and it is what it is. On the other hand, it is easier to punish like positioning mistakes in RB because of mouse aim, where being 800 meters away from a dude in RB is like a death sentence. In SB, if you're like near stall speeds, there's still a large chance that the dude misses. Like, even the guys that are really good at, like, 1 versus 1s, you will see that it really does come down to, a lot of the times, like, who's having a really good aiming day and who's having a bad aiming day, where the guy will do an attack, miss the attack, and then immediately get counterattack. And that's going to be one of the things that you see here, too, it's going to be one of those things that happens. I also have T-Rex in the background. I was going to use some of his footage, but the 2-person camera doesn't work, so I have to, like, use the mouse to, like, keep things in view, and that's really annoying to me. So we're not going to use it outside of this first one, but this just kind of shows how the F-15E and the F-15C more or less match up, or at least how they rate, because we're not going to go super duper in depth, because the way both of these planes fly in EC is different than you would set up in a 1v1. Basically, in EC, you go to altitude, you shoot AMRAAMs at things, and you turn around and you go away. Like, the whole gimmick of the F-15C is shooting AMRAAMs at Mach 2 and going back to base. And the F-15E does more or less exactly the same thing, but arguably slightly better or slightly worse, depending on the top speeds, because the top speed of the F-15E, because it got nerfed and American mains were coping about it, is actually less at altitude than the 15C, but it still does have the better acceleration. And also on top of that, the 15E is not just a better AMRAAM slinger or as good of an AMRAAM slinger, because I don't think it really makes that big of a difference for AMRAAM LARPing. You can carry like 26 fucking ground munitions with it too, so you can wipe the ground battle, wipe out the AA, and use all your AMRAAMs to push people around. Now, I don't think with the 15E, I don't think you can carry 8 AMRAAMs and a bunch of air-to-ground stuff, but I think you can carry something like 6, and 6 is probably enough. So America really went from suffering of having the best AMRAAM slinger in the game to having the best AMRAAM slinger in the game. It's literally stayed the same, and holy fuck, do I have opinions about that, because we are going on a year since the F-16C was added, since the MiG-29 SMT was added, since the MiG-29 flight model was made more realistic, where it's a flying air brake. Basically, more or less a year since the Su-27 was added to the game, where the Su-27 is a flying air brake. And we're going on a year of just solid, all-out NATO blue side domination in the sim. And that is not a good thing. That is not something that I think most people enjoy, and it really does show in some of the player counts. Like, when you play on a weekday and you try to play blue side in sim, the NATO side, whatever's matched up with America. People call it blue side, red side, whatever. We'll stick to the conventions that everyone uses. If you play during a weekday, you're not really finding a lot of games if you're trying to play blue, because they're all full and they're all in balance. And the player base that wants to play red side basically falls into average people that join and go, hey, wait, use the brain and go, hey, this shit fucking sucks ass. It sucks ass to have like 2 or 3 people shooting AMRAAMs at you as soon as you take off, and you're like, it's not a good learning environment. And then you have autistic people like me, autistic people like Simply Sinful, who we can carry red side by ourselves if we get together, but we're only doing it out of spite. Like, I have reached the point that I legitimately just like fucking hate American players. And it's not because like, oh, they play America, but it's like because as a collective group, these people are the most like insufferable fucking sore winners possible, where they suck out all of the oxygen from like the whole entire War Thunder discourse. Like, it's the fucking SpongeBob clip of like Patrick going, "You took my chocolate bar, now I'm gonna starve." It's like, America's got the F-16C, probably like one of the previous best multi-role, most versatile planes in the game. The only thing that was like really legitimately better for the past year is probably the Gripen, and you can make an argument for stuff like the Mirage 2000 being like just as good with Fox suits and stuff. But F-16C is still solid. F-15A, literally probably the best 13.0 next to the Gripen. Maybe the French F-16, the A that got added with 9Ms, is maybe better. You can make an argument for those 3 planes, but F-15A, still one of the best planes of the game, especially on 13.0 days. F-15C, still one of the best top tiers, one of the easiest to use. Like, you take off, you fucking TWS shit on radar, you shoot AMRAAMs, you fly away. If you get into a dogfight against anything that's Russian, you still have like legitimately a fighting chance, even if you don't know anything. And if you do know what you're doing, you do know how to fly around R-73s and that aspect, you just raid them and then you kill them. Like it's that simple. And the thing is, because we're going on a year of pure American domination, it means that the sim player base, the people that do play America, don't know jack shit about what they're doing. So they never fly their planes to anywhere near their potential, and then they go to the forums, they bitch and complain that America suffers, the R-73 is OP, Russian bias is real, the R-27ER was so oppressive, multipathing needs to be reduced again because F-14 mains are fucking coping about Mirage 2000s killing them, stuff like that, that really it's made the whole entire sim environment incredibly toxic. And I have added to that, by the way. I embrace the toxicity, I embrace the suck, because that's really, to me, that's really the only way the game is tolerable. If you really want to have like a fair, relaxing gameplay experience, playing Red Side or playing top tier sim just isn't it. And I keep playing Red Side, and I keep doing this over and over again, not just because I want to be the underdog and I want to prove something and like I got some proof. It's like, no, the game's like fucking unplayable if you want to play Blue Side and actually have like a competitively good time. Like I played A10 the other day. I was streaming and got like 105 like fucking ground kills. Game mode is turned into basically a PvE game mode for American players. There's too fucking many of them. The popularity of the planes is not just driven by, oh my god, I really love the F-15, I love the Eagle. Like, nobody got their dick hard over the F-15E except for the fact that it could do like Mach 2.5 basically instantly, because on the dev server and the first iteration of live server, it had fucking flight performance of like the SR-71 with fucking AMRAAMs on it. And as soon as guys like actually patched it, they patched it in like 2 days, they were supposed to, they patched on dev server allegedly, and then they forgot to add it, and all these fuckers go out and they spend $50 on day one to get the F-15E, and when they actually make it, you know, somewhat realistic, or at least match the performance charts, they go to the forums, they bitch like, oh, Gaijin hates America, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, when it comes to sim, holy fuck, is America the most handheld nation in the game? Like, you can go to any tier, and America has some kind of bullshit that is the easiest thing to play in the game. Like, you start at the bottom, right? You start at the bottom of the list. XP55, premium plane, is at like 3.0 in sim. 3.0, plane fights like fucking biplanes and can do like 600 kph on the deck and 14G turns with like fucking minimal energy loss, and has 20mm cannons. Like, plane is like insane. You move up from there, you end up with things like the American Ki-61 is the same tier as the Japanese one. It's premium. A lot of American people buy it because it's fucking, you turn your brain off, you hold the stick back, and you win every dogfight. It's the most noob-friendly plane that you can possibly get in sim. And then once you move up to like 4.3, you got the P-47 D-28s, which the 4.3 is fair. The Axis side of the matchmaker gets a little bit better version at a lower BR, which is like, that's also ridiculous and stupid, but it is what it is. And then you move up to 5.7. There is no 5.7 in the game outside of maybe the TA-152H while it's at altitude that really authentically competes with like what the F4U4B does instead. The F4U4B is one of the fastest planes on the deck. It's faster than 109K4. It's faster than 152H. It climbs better, and they keep upgrading it. Like, Gaijin has increased the engine horsepower from around, I want to say, 2,800 up to 2,900 when they changed the flight model. So that the flight model compresses more, but it compresses more in RB. In an SB, it's still very much the same. And then you have like the flaps that come out, and if you get the landing flaps down in the 4B, it goes from being like high-speed plane to being low-speed goofy plane. And then you have the 20 mils that, with the real shatter changes, have gotten basically, they're incredibly good, and you have like 900 rounds of ammo. And that's always been the case. The F-44B has always been one of the outright most popular props in the game. Like, you look at Greek Air Force's stat card, and he has like fucking 10,000 games. It's like one of the only planes that he used to fly. And it really doesn't change except for maybe your mid-tier jets. Some of your mid-tier US jets haven't like aged all that great. Your F9Fs are kind of mediocre, and your F86s are kind of mediocre now because like the Ariete exists, which is kind of par for the course. But also, those BR ranges are absolutely like fucking dead. They're full of nothing but B-57s, dudes flying back and forth to bases, bombing, and I like the BR. I want to play the Saber, but finding games that are not on a weekend in Sim just like aren't a thing. The two most popular sections of Sim are prop tier and top tier, and then you have grinder F5E, F5C kind of tier that's also like pretty popular. Those are like the three major segments of the Sim population, and in 2 out of 3 of those, America absolutely fucking dominates. And in the other one, depending on the day of the week, America also totally fucking dominates because you have the F8U2 at fucking 10.0 now, which is absolutely fucking insane to me. Same thing with like the F4E at 10.7, not as insane. Understandable why it went down. Made a video about it. But every single tier that you play as America has some shit that's predominantly absolutely fucking handholdy. And it's not going to change. It's not going to get any better, because if we look at the future, we look at the leak list and all this other bullshit that comes out. I'm not making a hype video for leak list, but basically, up and coming, probably have F-18 and Su-33. Real life Su-33 does not carry active radar homing missiles. It will be a heavier side grade to the Su-27, unless there's some fucking Su-33 SM fucking 2 bullshit that like we don't know about, and maybe they'll graft some R-77s on it, but it'll still be a side grade. The F-18 is going to be its own whole entire new plane with probably 8 AMRAAMs, maybe up to 10. We will see. We don't know. But the F-18 is the probably next major thing that's going to be added. It's going to be another patch where America gets another plane that it's not going to redefine the meta, because the meta is still going to be high-speed, sling AMRAAM, fly away. But they're going to have another tool in the toolbox to really just kind of like shit on everything, whereas Russia's going to get another flanker and another 29 probably, and those flight models are not going to get any better. And the flight models don't match the real life expectations of the plane. They don't match like the mythology of the flanker as the super maneuverable thing, but they also just don't match the manuals. They don't match the sustained turn rate, and they don't match like the energy bleed. They don't match like the things that we can like actually tell. And I've done this before, where I've got a video with the HUD footage, like, hey, this dude does this in this many seconds, and look at the speed loss, and then, hey, do it in the game, and you'll lose more speed, and you'll lose speed at like a gross like overestimation. That really is the limitations of the flanker flight model. Is it does not retain its speed well, and it doesn't take its excess speed or its excess power and actually convert it into position really well. Once you get slow in this thing, you're kind of stuck there. And it means that you have to be really careful in flying this plane, and you're really relying on the other guy to make a mistake. And really the only benefit that you have is your low speed control is pretty good. Your low speed control is pretty good, as long as you don't have to point the nose up after your initial pull, because you pull too hard and then you're like, oh cool, I'm like flat spinning, and you can flat spin really good and you can maintain control that way. But also, because of the control setup for War Thunder, because of those manual limits, F-15, F-16, Mirage 2000, J-10, all of these other fighters do kind of like 95% of the same thing that you do. So like your little benefactor thing that you have here isn't really as beneficial as you think it would be. And it means that the way that I play the flanker, the way that I have to play the flanker against Butters, is I have to maintain speed, and I have to be really careful about when I shed it. Because if I shed it at the wrong time, I go for the bad shot, I miss. He's going Mach 1 and I'm going 300 kph, and I'm falling out of the sky. And that's really what is happening in all of these duels. He's just doing a gigantic loop, flying around, and I'm trying to bait to like a low speed fight because I know that he's brandy new in the F-15E, so he doesn't like really got a feel for it. He hasn't really like figured out the window where he can pull hard and when he can't pull hard. So I can kind of use that against him, but that's not the plane. There's some funny things that you can do with the flanker with like the manual controls and the Cobra button and all that stuff, but it's really not going to be repeatable for most people. Like the only two people that I know of that are like actually fairly decent in the flanker that I think give me like a really good run for my money are Simply Sinful, and then there's some like Russian guy named Connor RF who he has this thing where he does like a really strict big energy spiral at like 1000 kph. And he's good at that. Like I've dueled him once and I didn't be like, well, I was drunk and I didn't know, and like, no, the guy was good. And so if you see him, like, he actually doesn't know he's good. He probably doesn't watch the channel. He probably doesn't speak the language of being a sim shitter. Aside from that, in EC, it actually won't matter. In EC, it will not matter because, as I said before, American mains, when it comes to actually playing their planes and getting the most out of their performance, they're so handheld that they never have to. They've never been pressured. They're basically playing a game that is fundamentally different from the one that we're playing. Basically, you load into red side, and it's like getting kicked in the fucking balls over and over. And some people are into that. Right now, I'm into that, because I'm like, eventually I'll become fucking Iron Balls McGinty, and you'll fucking kick me in the balls enough, and it'll go clang, and I'll come back and, like, fucking kill motherfuckers. But American players don't have that. If you look at any of these big kill games that, like, I post, any of the big kill games that Nimble posts or Simply post, you look at the right side, you look at the blue side, it's a fucking scroll wheel of blue side players that died twice and quit. Like, that is the reality. Most people in Sim, number one, can't fucking afford it, because the Sim economy for PvP actions is actually not very good. If you're not doing, like, 3-to-1 KD and not playing with premium time, you're losing money, you're hemorrhaging money, and then you're going to have to go play something else to build up a surplus to then come in and suck ass at Sim. But if you look at it, right side, fucking scroll wheel of names. Just one player after another joins, quits, and because there's only 1 or 2 games available for blue side players at any one time, because everyone wants to play blue because it's better than everything else, guy quits, another guy joins. If red side player joins, that opens up basically 2 slots for blue side. So at any one point during a match, you're always outnumbered, and you're in planes that are not nearly as good. The only like real exception for that is like the J10 is legitimately good. I think the J10 is probably one of the best planes in the game, maybe the second best, depending on what you consider your playstyle to be. The flanker, because they upgraded the HMD to 20 kilometers, because only fucking autists like me and Simply Sinful are willing to like constantly fly this shit and are inventing new ways to fuck with blue teams all the time. The flanker's actually pretty good. Like, I legitimately like having 12 missiles because I have Stockholm syndromed myself into liking it and figuring out how to work around all of the abysmal dog shit aspects of it, which the abysmal dog shit aspects are, namely the radar. The radar is fucking terrible, and the R-77 is also not great, but also you can just notch and chaff and shoot them at close range, and most US players will end up flying into them anyways. And then you do have some good aspects. You have some redeeming features, like the R-27 ET, like, fucking legitimately, like, redeems the plane in EC, especially, like, when you couple it with Erst, especially with the way that most people play. Aside from that, flight model-wise, these are not getting any better. There's not going to be any, like, kind of, like, bug report where Gaijin decides that everyone that's been reading the manuals and, like, showing the results are interpreting it wrong. And I think it just comes down to the aspect where the plane is wrong is in terms of specific excess power. And specific excess power is the thing that I've been talking about. It is the biblical term, the academic term for energy retention. And the energy retention on this plane is not very good, but it does sort of match up to the sustained turn rate, and it does reach initial turn rate. And that's compounded by the fact that planes like the F-16A, the Gripen, the Mirage 2000, their specific excess power is also fucking skewed, and it's usually skewed a little bit in the other direction. But that's a hard argument to make, because the Mirage 2000, the last time that I tested it, it retains way too much energy at high speeds. So you pull hard at like 800 kph, and you don't lose speed. And then once you get to slow speed, though, you actually lose too much speed. And then the way that I think it ends up working out, though, is at very low speeds, you actually sustain too high of a turn rate. So like that flight model is also like all sorts of fucked if you compare it to the EM diagrams. It just boils down to these games, like this game and DCS, do not model specific excess power that well. And it's one of those things that's probably like incredibly difficult to model. And that's like a whole nother video. I will, at some point, I will sit down, pull out my charts and my fucking cross-references and my testing, and I'll write a script, and I'll talk about that and actually kind of go in depth about what the fuck is actually going on with the flight models. But the long story short is, this patch is another American hand-holding simulator. Red side suffers again. Technically, I don't. It's the same. It's the same shit, just a year later. It has not changed, and I don't think it's going to change in the future. And that means that really, in order to enjoy Sim, you have to be willing to just like look past the flaws of the game mode. And I'm willing to do that. I'm a big enough asshole that I will come into your game and fucking kill you over and over again out of spite, because that's just the kind of person that I am. On the other hand, we can't do that on Blue Side. We can't, like, I can't get me and my friends to play Blue Side because, like, we can't find games, and it's boring. It's absolutely, like, mind-numbingly boring to queue up and, like, you take off, you shoot AMRAMs, and if there's nobody on the enemy team that's, like, actually good, like, if I'm not spamming AMRAMs at, like, Simply Sinful or Nimble or any of the other fucking dudes in the Red Side Super Squad, then it's, like, playing Blue Side is just fucking boring. And it's kind of like for this reason that I have a hard time recommending like Sim. Like, I hope people play it, I enjoy it, but I also understand that like it's an acquired taste, and telling random people that, hey, you should play Red Side and get your dick beat off every time is I'm not gonna sell you on that. But anyways, as far as the 15E goes, I know that I kind of like rambled on for about 30 minutes here. Do I think that it really like alters the way the game plays? Right now, not really. I've played a good bit of flanker games, I played a good bit of Red Side, and it's fucking dudes going to altitude trying to shoot AMRAMs at you. It's the same thing as kind of early patch where they shoot, they glide bomb the airfield, and then they turn away, and usually you can shoot an ET at them and they'll die. All of the same people that literally only play Blue Side and never deviate from it are still only ever going to play Blue Side and never deviate from it. And all of the people that are spitefully carrying Red Side are going to congregate in either my server or Nimble server, and there will be maybe one good game a day or one good game at a time where like Red Side actually has a chance of winning, because when you get like a shit ton of experienced players in a voice channel on the same team, and you make them fight like the fucking horde of random noobs, you can actually win. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to engage with the community and actually be able to like willing to work at it. And that's not something that I think most War Thunder players like do all the time. Like, I don't expect everyone to be like a social butterfly, because I know I play a lot of the game. I play way too fucking much, but a lot of the time I also play alone. Not just because like my social cues are like capped out and I don't want to like talk to people, but also I value the experience of solo gameplay, because I don't want my perspective to be completely skewed of like I'm always playing with like my select group of friends that like we all like spitefully got good out of spite to fucking kill Blue Side players to listen to them cry. Because that's probably not your experience. Because if you're watching this channel, you're one of like the 1,000 people or so that'll probably watch this video. Your experience is you load into a game and you're like, okay, cool, I might know how to notch, I understand the concept, but then dude's launching 8 fucking AMRAMs at you, you're overwhelmed, the fucking RWR is going all the fucking time, and your team evaporates, and you're like, this is unplayable. Like, it is unplayable for the average person who isn't, like, already emotionally invested in this, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Anyways, that's going to be pretty much the end of the video. That's a lot of these fights kind of worked out the same way. They're more or less rate fights. Didn't really talk a lot about, like, I'm trying to go vertical here and then blah, 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 blah. Like, that's a whole different thing. We'll talk about it later. Anyways, that's the video. It's 30 minutes of me rambling into the microphone. Red side good. Go kill fucking blue fuckers.